again, everyone. This is Travis Bontrager with the Boss Association, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're joined by phone by a friend of mine, Larry Silver, and Larry is the owner of Contractor Marketing Inc. He is a construction consultant and strategic planner, and he has a lot of great insight into the effective methods of not only starting a business but growing a business in a strategic manner. So I wanted to bring him here today to just share some information on his strategies and some of the things that he's seeing in the construction industry today. So Larry, thank you for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Travis. I really appreciate you having me on the show. Let's see if we can help someone out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we did kind of a little short bio intro there, but can you tell us a little bit more about your background and where you came from and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I did a business degree at New York University. I've been in the construction industry since that, which is 1988, so 25 years. I've been in the construction industry, a little bit in the concrete industry, a little bit in the tilt-up concrete industry, and then I've been self-employed for 17 years, helping primarily non-residential contractors around the U.S. with their strategic planning, marketing, and business development planning and implementation. We also have a recruiting firm that focuses on hires.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know you've done a lot of recruiting, and that kind of gives you an insight into what's going on in the industry as a whole, too, and it really helps all of it. I mean, from a strategic planning standpoint, a marketing standpoint. So I know you've talked a lot and you've written a lot about strategic planning, but what is the definition of a strategic plan if it's new to someone?
Well, a strategic plan, I like John Myrna. He's got a progress pyramid that teaches that the pyramid has a base, which is the vision mission of the organization, and then basically the strategy, which he equates to the picture on the puzzle box. But the vision is, if you're lost in the woods and you can't find your way out, you can always look up and try to find the North Star and get some direction, even without a compass on you. And so the vision is the North Star. It's way off in the distance. Where does your organization want to be in 30 years from now? And normally with the vision, there's a big, hairy, audacious goal, according to John Myrna. And I like his, I've adopted some of his nomenclature and the way he does things. And I had another consultant help me with a simple approach to strategic planning. But by the time you do your vision and your mission, which the mission is, the next 3 to 5 years, what can we do to accomplish our vision? And then finally, strategy is more of a short-term, 1 to 3 years. What does this look like as we move forward? And we call the strategic business plan. You start creating strategic business objectives based on key issues that you're grappling with. And these strategic objectives, Travis, change the status quo of the organization. So by definition, if the strategic objectives that you come up with in your strategic plan don't change the status quo, then it's not a strategic plan. And that's just the way you normally do things day in and day out. What I like to do is go into the organization and do a SWOT assessment, SWOT. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's just interesting that you pay a consultant big money to come learn about your organization, what you already know about yourself. But most companies, Travis, have never written down, what are their strengths. And I go a little bit further than typical SWOT assessment. I say, based on these strengths, what are your top 3 strengths? And then finally, what is your greatest strength as a company? And I equate that to an iceberg sticking out in the ocean. You've got the tip of the iceberg, which is typically 10 to 11%. That is the greatest strength of the company that the marketplace sees. That's over the waterline. But we realize that there's a lot of strengths that are unique to that contracting company, that architecture firm, that are below the surface. So it's really important when you do a strategic plan, before you start changing the status quo, to know what your company's greatest strength is. And I see that missing in a lot of strategic plans. So I say no more than 3 to 4 key issues, Travis. I found that if you hit 5 or more, it's not realistic to change over the next 12 months. But if you do 3 or at the most 4, you can have champions for each one of those issues you're grappling with. You go to a strategic planning retreat away from the company and the business as usual, and you start to talk about each of the key issues that you want to change as a company, and you basically develop a game plan based on your strengths and your greatest strengths of, these are the activities we're going to do. It's typically 5 to 7, 5 to 8 activities that are going to change this key issue in the company. So moving forward in 12 months, we don't look the same as we do now. And then each of those champions for those key issues develop like a task force, where they may have 3 or 4 or 5 people helping them within the company to make those changes. But you come out of the strategic planning retreat with basically an Excel spreadsheet that is an implementation matrix. And it shows the 3 or 4 key issues, all the action steps that you're going to take, if there's any related budget to that action item, the timetable, schedule, and any special characteristics. So it's really a game plan that you come out of with at the retreat that shows, a map of how you're going to move forward as a company. And it's exciting. But I have to say this, a lot of companies and a lot of strategic planners do a good job at this phase 1 strategic planning, but where they fall down is phase 2, which is how do we make that move forward and implement that. I was going to share that.
Yeah, no, those are all very points. One of the things I remember, you and I talked initially, and you are a fan of making sure that upper management, if they have a role, it's kind of a smaller role because the strategic plan is obviously implemented by people on the ground running the business every day. What do you see that as a common mistake that organizations like to have their owner or VPs be heavily involved in that strategic planning process, and is that a mistake?
I don't think that that's a mistake. I think it's good. What you don't want to do when you implement the key issues of the company is have middle managers and below, because they won't get the job done. Matter of fact, they're just not used to that high level of, aside from doing the tyranny of the urgent, those fires and those daily grind things that they have to do in their business, they're not used to working on their business and doing very important activities. And whereas the upper level executives are more likely to do a good job, aside from their daily urgent activities, they'll set aside a half hour, an hour to work on the strategic plan. I really encourage it to be the key executives and then to involve lower level people in the implementation. But they have, Travis, 3 to 4 months to overcome that inertia that every strategic plan has. Everyone's, jumping up and down, rah-rah, cheerleading when they come back from the retreat, but they go back to business as usual. And I've urged people, bring me back once a month and let's make sure that your champions know what they're doing, that things are moving forward. And I found that the companies that don't hire me to help them implement generally fail, especially if they've never done strategic planning. They generally fail in the implementation. But my clients that hire me for that second part, phase 2, to implement, I generally get a 50 to 90% execution of that plan. It's just like project management, If you're going to build a building, aren't you going to come up with a plan that has a schedule? And aren't you going to try to stick to that plan? Well, what happens if you get way behind? Well, it's going to cost your company a tremendous amount of overhead. So contractors know how to manage their project management and their estimating functions, etc., but they're not used to making changes within their own organization. So implementation is where the rubber meets the road. It's where most companies that don't have experience fall down. And even though it's really sexy and glitzy that do phase 1 strategic planning and go to a retreat and all that, it seems very, high management minded. But if they don't implement the plan, they've wasted their time and energy. So I like to stay with the company about 2 years until they can prove to me that they know how to implement. It takes some practice and some daily commitments. But once they do, then I'll come less frequently, and I'm more confident that I've trained the organization to be strategic planners. The other thing we find is that the people who are good at strategic planning in the company end up becoming the leaders of the company. Even if it's a mid-level person, if they really step to the plate and doing well, probably that person's going to have a career path to be a leader in that company. And some of the high-level leaders hold things close to the vest and don't do a very good job of implementing. And they end up over time not impacting the organization. They may be a good employee and they may get a lot of good things done during the day, but they're not the growth employees that you need to take your company to the next level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And another thought on that too is, maybe someone read a book or went to an event one time about strategic planning within the organization, and they think, well, they can handle doing the facilitating and bringing everyone together, and but that oftentimes probably ends up becoming a catastrophe more than anything. So you're always you're recommending a facilitator come in as a third party as opposed to having someone internally trying to run that whole strategic plan, right?
I do recommend that. I wouldn't say it's impossible to do it on your own, but it's like trying to be your own physician or your own attorney. It doesn't go over very well. Plus, the key leaders of the company want to be objective and they want to be involved in the process, but I don't let an owner or president dominate at a strategic plan. I don't let them share more than their portion of what they want to share, because a strong leader like that will influence other people to do what they want. Now, helping establish the vision mission, yes, the president, owner, VPs, they need to kind of steer that a little bit because that's where the company is going. And mid-level people, although they can contribute to the vision mission, I think that is more of a high-level exercise. What you don't want to do, Travis, is try to accomplish the vision mission at the strategic planning retreat. It takes too long. I know people that have done mission statements. They've taken 1 year to do it and spent $1 million just developing a mission statement. It sounds silly, but there are companies that have done that. It's pretty funny. Secondly, a good example of this is the power of strategic planning. Is a $500 million company. I won't name their name, but they were in the top 20 generals in America. And I went around and did training for their organization, got to know them. And then when I started Contractor Business Development Association in the 90s, we invited the head of the Denver office to come share his view of strategic planning. And he ended up sharing that. They were doing $500 million. It was a goal of the organization, their mission to do $1 billion in 5 years. So that means doubling your growth in 5 years. That's something like 14-point-something% growth per year, which for a $500 million organization is just amazing. And they actually were able to achieve that over the 5 years, but the head of the Denver office thought it was a bunch of pie-in-the-sky garbage. He didn't believe in the strategic planning process at all, but somewhere around a year or two into it, when he saw that it was really working, he actually became the strategic planning officer of the whole company, traveled around to all the business units trying to help them implement and learn the process, and their strategic plan looked like a kind of like an operating annual plan of a company that a board of directors would send out. It was very well done. So we heard that story and that testimony, and if a $500 million company can do it, even though they're big and hard to turn on the dime, how about a small company of 1 to 5 people? And the answer is that's even easier. I had a client in the Cleveland area. They were doing $10 million a year, and once again, they asked me, do you think we can do $20 million in 5 years from now? And I actually laughed. They said, why are you laughing? I said, of course. I've seen $500 million companies double in size. It's just a matter of, what markets do you want to go after? How are you going to employ your resources? We ended up, and I told them, in 5 years from now, if I'm still involved with this, I guarantee you'll get a project that's larger than your annual revenue now, meaning larger than $10 million. And then they laughed at me and said, we don't think so. 5 years from then, they got a $15 million filled-up concrete project that got them involved with. And they just couldn't believe that they were able to accomplish that. But we taught them how to do strategic planning, how to implement. We added a business developer and a chief architect to this small design-build firm. And sometimes I'll stay with clients for 5+ years. And basically, they used to chase every project that came to them. They said they were like whores in their market. But they learned to be discriminating and to decide to pre-qualify opportunities and focus their resources on those markets that they were strong in. So strategic planning is just a great tool to accomplish that. I don't know any other way to do it.
Yeah. Well, in one of your philosophies, you and I have chatted a few different times, and as opposed to just kind of giving them a framework to run with, you like to roll up your sleeves and go to work with them. And I'm sure that that's probably a reason why your program ends up being a little more successful than even most. And what can you tell us a little bit more about your philosophy there?
I think that a lot of people like even the big accounting firms, they generally charge about 25 to 30,000 to do phase one. I've always charged around 15, and I've sometimes come down a little bit if it's a very small company. I also have a growth coaching program that's virtual that can come in under 1,000 a month, and what I do is just send them the framework and the outline for how to go about doing this. And then instead of traveling there, which is what really gets expensive and takes a lot of a consultant's time, a good consultant's going to make 2,000 or 3,000 a day if they're worth their salt. So the growth coaching program is a way for smaller companies for under 1,000 a month to be able to develop their plan. I had 3 clients in Houston doing this back several years ago, and each one of them, after the 90-day virtual coaching program, they each put me on retainer, and we're anywhere from $1,500 a month to $3,500 a month. But did, I would say, great things in their companies, and it was just wonderful from 2 or 3 person companies to, I think one of the companies was maybe 25, 30 employees. But they were all 3 small companies just trying to make a name for themselves, learning how to market and sell their services. And the strategic planning process was scratching where they were itching. We were able to do it and build them up a little bit before the expense of having an outside person was prohibitive to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
well,
I think a lot of people are good at phase one strategic planning, just as good as me, but my strength is I know the construction industry and I know how to implement and join the companies and help train and coach them over time to learn how to do it on their own so they're independent.
Yeah, and you become more of a partner in their business at that point too, which is always an invaluable resource for a company.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, maybe you can make this article that I sent you available to anyone at your site. And also there's part of the article is them doing a self-graded test. I call it strategic planning grade on how well they're doing in 10 different areas. If they haven't done strategic planning before, they're going to score really low. But once again, if they start this year, and I'm even offering a little bit of a special right now in mid-year, if they've never done it before, they have to realize that over 80% of what we call best-of-class contractors, the unique thing about them is they do strategic planning. But the vast majority of contractors have never done this process, and they're basically getting thrown around by tyranny of the urgent and by what the market is dictating to them, rather than trying to control their own destiny through this simple process.
Yeah, and you're right, Larry. I will post this article, and just so everyone knows, that what you'll see is towards the bottom of this article, it's about 4 pages long, Larry says, how does your firm rate? And then there are, see how many different, there's 10 different
areas.
10 different areas, and he has you walk through and kind of do a self-assessment of where you rank or where your stance is right now and how that relates to a good plan for your business. So this is a good resource, and we will definitely post that. So at what point, Larry, go ahead.
If I could just end by saying that, the key way to remember strategic planning is to remember the word strategy. And I use an analogy, a word picture of chess. And a lot of people play chess, and it's a wonderful game, but it's all about strategy. It's all about capturing the other person's king. And there's so many historic ways and moves that you can do that. But I always ask, what's the best moves on the chessboard for your company to change the status quo over the next 12 months, looking at your vision, mission, and strategy as a company? And it's just a neat way to remember that, chess is a good example of strategic planning. You're always thinking 3, 4, 5 moves ahead, at least the better chess player. So I just wanted to share that think of chess when you think of strategic planning.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. Very, very good. At what point then, Larry, is someone's kind of, considering this or not sure if it would apply to their business, when would it make sense to reach out to you and schedule a kind of a preliminary assessment or a call to discuss?
They can call me anytime. I've helped one-person companies like an architect in New York City. I think I had a guy, he may have had 2 laborers in Austin, just starting out as a general contractor. And the strategic plan is much simpler. I would advise them to go the growth coaching virtual route where I don't have to come out. And like I said, under 1,000 a month, they can get up and running and put all the stuff in paper, use their key people to learn to start developing this material for their company. And then as they grow and as they get strengthened, we can go and actually facilitate the retreat for them and so on and so forth. It takes a couple, 3 years sometimes to really get your arms around this process, but it's relevant for any size company. There's no better time to start than another. I would just say don't put it off. If you have a little bit of resources that you can invest in what's important on your company, there's no time like today to start that process.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time this morning, Larry. It's been very educational. I'm sure people have gotten a lot out of this. So before we sign off, you have any parting words or anything to kind of leave us with?
No, just that I understand how tough it is out there in the marketplace right now. Unless you're in Oklahoma or Texas or some of the better markets, things, although they're chirping that the economy has turned around, I see that it's still a ways off to recover. I especially see that they're not hiring key people for their companies, so that's showing me that although we're probably not in a recession, projects are more difficult to move forward. So it's important that whatever size company you are, that you focus your limited time and resources to growing your company according to your strengths and according to the culture of your company. And I just encourage you, get involved with strategic planning, become a best-of-class contractor or design firm. And even if you don't hire me, I would be glad to be of help in one way or another, starting with this article as a goodwill gesture. And my best of luck to you and blessing on you as you try to navigate in a very difficult economy here.
Fantastic. Well, some great words there, Larry. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Travis.
You bet. And as always, if you've enjoyed watching or listening to this interview, I guess this morning with Larry, make sure and share it with your social networks as well. You can click the buttons above the video to share on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or Google Plus, whatever your preferred network is, and make sure and just let everybody else know that this information exists and it can help their business too. So again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next interview.